Hello, this is Cuckoo. I have a piano. It's right here. This is my piano. It says Gröndal, and you can see on the action there it says Schwander. I think it sounds very German, but it's actually French. And then the frame, everything behind it, it's made by British Knight. Yeah, so that's my piano. It's not particularly special or grand or anything, but it's my piano, and I love it. So in all the music that you've heard that I made, and there is a piano, most of the time it's that piano. I just love it. So I've been sampling this piano a number of times, and it's great fun. And now it's a great time to do it again because, first of all, it's in this detuned state right now. So I think we can make a really mellow background piano in this kind of half detuned state. And also got a new synthesizer called the Nordwave 2. It's right here. So I was thinking, can I make that kind of mellow background piano and put it on the Nordwave 2? Well, absolutely. That's what I'm gonna do today. I think the only thing that I need to keep in mind when doing this is that there is one hardware limitation on the Nordwave 2 currently, and that is you can only use one velocity layer. So I cannot divide it up into different samples for soft, medium, and hard velocities. No, I need to make like a good medium velocity, I think, and then open and close filters and make it responsive to velocity. It's all gonna be good. I just mentioned this up front because I know I'm gonna forget mentioning it later. All right, let's get going. Yeah, it's okay. One thing that trying to find a placement is just to listen. Try to listen really carefully when you play the notes and see what happens when you move the mic. Like, listen for any type of pleasant sweet spot and unpleasant naughty spots. Yeah. So just by tilting, you can kind of search around for overtones, and sometimes you just happen to find a good spot where it all is acceptable. I think for this kind of rough recording, what I'm doing now, it's not optimal in any way. The room is kind of bad. The instrument is old and very plain. So it's a lot of compromise. And when you strike like a good compromise where you can hear the attack, you can hear the tone, there is no unpleasant muffled thing, there is no spiking resonance that is just very unpleasant overall, the whole instrument. And when you try kind of dial in a place for the mics where it sounds pleasant, that's what I kind of leave them. So now I've got them very close, almost like just 2 centimeters away from the strings. And when listening to frequencies, if I'm close like this, I can hear the piano itself and in the headphones, which is not very good. So I should ideally just get my head as far away as I can when I try to find the sweet spot. Like, I think I found sort of a sweet spot here. I'm not going to move them around, so I need to avoid these. They sound like shit. Maybe. Yeah, I think so. I'm going to record all of the notes and I'm going to try to keep the same velocity on all of them. And that's going to be like semi-firm, I'd say. yeah, I don't know. Let's try it. Right, so the signal path I was using on the piano was this. I was using first the virtual preamp called UA610A. It's a kind of vintage preamp, I guess you'd call it, which it is a little bit noisy, and my mics are a bit noisy, but this is very much picking up the sound in a very pleasant way, specifically when recording acoustic instruments, in my opinion. I just bumped the low frequency +6, and I bumped the high frequencies as well, +6. And I think this is giving a very nice balanced low frequencies in the piano, and just boosted the volume accordingly. And then, because of both the mics and this preamp, what's actually coming out is pretty noisy. So I think that's much because of the microphones that I use. I like them, but they are kind of noisy and produced in a vintage kind of way. So I'm using this as an expander or a compressor, and also as an EQ. You can see I found some particular frequencies here that just don't sound really good in this room. I think it's both the piano that has some frequencies that just boom a bit, so I pull them down, and then I pull the top heavily off. And without this plugin altogether, if I turn off this whole plugin, which is managing, it's an expander, so it's opening up when sound is coming in and gradually closing down as the sound dies, and also the EQ. If I just turn it off, you can hear that noise. It's really nice to have this fluffy atmosphere, but it's not really suitable for stacking notes on top onto each other in like a sampled instrument, because every sample will have this noise in it. And if you play 2 or 3 or 4 samples at the same time, this noise will get stacked and be unbearable. So when creating a sample instrument, I suggest you tone it down in the tops much more than you would initially like, because it's just gonna be unbearable if you play polyphonically afterwards. So let's have a listen to the recording and see what it sounds like. I might have to do more stuff with it now that it's recorded, and I also need to listen to it on the speaker. Sounds good. Up here it's starting to sound a little bit bland. That's a typical dull note. I'm not going to use that. That's clearer. So I think overall it sounds okay, but I'm going to see if I can do something to spice it up. The first thing I'd try to use is an EQ. Just if there's something very generic I could do to the sound. So one EQ that I'm using always is FabFilter Pro Q. Looks like this. All right. It sounds all right. So what if I lifted this? Or muted this? I don't know. Okay, the next thing I'd like to try is a multiband compressor. And I also use FabFilter. It's called FabFilter MB, Pro MB. I'm just gonna click some zones out a little bit without thinking here, just to have some zones to work with. It sounds much more contained. So the only thing I've done is to put some bands out and set up a threshold. When this particular frequency range is reaching that level, it's going to duck it, just this frequency range. And that's going to help it not stick out in an unpleasant way in different places. So now there's different zones, and each zone is kind of going to react on its own and dampen sudden spikes in resonance. And I'm going to refine this and see if I can make it really pleasant. Right, so what I've done now is to refine that multiband compressor a little bit and make it not so dramatic. And also, I made this, the top band, which is the high frequency air mostly, I made that like a dramatic expander. And this is because the way especially the Nordwave 2 works is that it has some predefined dynamics that you can use if you choose to. And some of those dynamic groups is a piano group. And what it's doing, it has some sort of low pass filter that when you strike harder, it's opening up. And when you strike softer, it's closing down the low pass filter. And if you have a lot of high frequencies in your sample, it will sound very unnatural when the low pass filter is working. So I'm going to try to see if I can make a good piano sound with not so much air up in the high frequencies that could use with that setting. And if it's not working, no big deal. I can dial it in myself on the synth with one of the filters there. And another thing I did, I put this there, like a very light expander, so that every time that I lift the finger, we can hear the sound going very silent. And that's going to help the software to recognize when there is a new tone. And it's also going to help me with the editing, so that I don't have to do a lot of manual editing. I think the trouble you run into every time, at least I do, when I try to record a piano for a sampler, is that I try to make it crisper, and then in the end it's too crisp. So then when I play it on the sampler, it's just too crisp and it sounds a bit weird. So trying to strike a balance where it's just crisp enough and has, I mean, a piano isn't crisp, but sometimes I fool myself into thinking it needs to be crisp. It doesn't. It's a mysterious tone somewhere in between there that needs to be just right. So what I'd like to do now is just put a mastering thing on top of this, because if it's too dynamic, it's not gonna play very well with the other sounds on the synth. So I'm gonna make sure it's not too too dynamic. Actually, I think I'm gonna use, let's see, one of my favorites here, Universal Audio BX Master Desk. This one has a good, fairly simple to use, I'd say, mastering plugin with. So I'm gonna pump up the volume a bit, and then look at this to see how much the compressor is working. A bit more, see what happens. Too much, I think. Not sure if I'm going to use the EQ. How about the bass? Maybe. Let's listen down here. Yeah, maybe a little bass there. What I'm listening for is trying to answer the question, is this going to make it more pleasant? Because I want it to be pleasant. Question is, should I make it even louder? It always feels like too brutal to make a piano sample sound too loud. I never want to do it, but sometimes you need to comply with whatever levels the rest of the sounds on the keyboard or the final destination is like. Okay, the last thing I want to do in Logic before exporting it is to just make sure that there is in fact silence between the tones and not any unwanted little cracks. So first of all, I'm using Control X here to automatically divide it. This could be a little bit hit and miss. So what I'm going to do now is going to take all of these, shorten them a little bit, and make an extra fade out on all of them. increase the beginning, make a slight fade in, just to know that I have that. Everything covered. So as you can hear, all of these are slightly too hard, but because the Nordwave doesn't have velocity layers, I think it could be a good idea to have a slightly too hard mezzo forte, or maybe even forte playings when you record it, because it's easier to tame it and make it softer than to make it more aggressive afterwards on the synth. Okay, so now let's export this and see if that will cut it. Node Sample Editor, version 3. So yeah, let's just try to see what it's doing automatically. So I've taken some precaution in order to make it easy for the editor to understand, made like fade outs and deliberate little gaps. So I'm just going to drop this sample here and see, cross my fingers. Let's see. So not sure it got everything right. Let's see. So the lowest note is like a low A. I know that for sure. It looks like it came on the right note. That should be C. Yeah. That's a whole step. So from there to there, I'm going to move it one step. Let's see. C. Yeah. Okay. So we've got the whole range. So it'll be interesting to see how big this file would be with all of this, just as it is. So I'm going to save as, I'll call it C piano mezzo forte full. Every time I save, it's also going to compress it into the actual format, the end format. And it says 11.4 megabytes for this whole recording in stereo with long tones and everything, which is surprising. First of all, I'm just going to try to transfer this to the Nord and see what it sounds like. So let's just see what it sounds like without anything done here. So there's no dynamics or anything. I know for a fact that we need to make a couple of changes. One, pitch, because this is detuned. It's not correctly tuned. And if I want to, I can pitch correct it in the editor per note. I should do that. I know for a fact that the whole piano is like -10 or something like that, -13 maybe. So if I select all of these and tune it up 10 cents. And also, by just playing this, I can feel like a couple of notes have, let's see, start, stop, start. I'm going to zoom in. A couple of notes have not the correct starting point. So I'm going to go through all of them and adjust for that. These are good. These are not good. So I'm going to move this starting point. This is not done live. I'm playing here, but this is going to have to be saved and sent again. Okay, this is not good. I could have done a better job with trimming the audio, and then it become much better. I'm leaving just a tad before it, because I know that sometimes it just sounds a little bit unnatural when you cut it right at the beginning. I don't expect it to sound marvelous because it is a very simple piano. Okay, so now tune it up 10 cents I adjusted the beginning. There we go. Remember, I told you, like, if you cut it too tight, it sounds a little bit unnatural. And I feel like maybe I did. Some of them were just too tight there, so I'm going to move them. Move the starting point of the sample slightly, roll it back a bit. If I did a fade in, I'm not sure how long the fade in is. It just says fade in. So I'm going to try that and see what it sounds like. Okay, save, transfer to Nord. So I think fade in should just make it safe so that we avoid clicks and snaps and pop. So no matter where we start a sample, it should always start from 0 and kind of quickly. All right, so the next step is going to try the dynamics. I'm going to select the category here, piano, enable dynamics, save and transfer to Nord. So now what it's going to do is going to use some filters that are predetermined and it's like preset filters. That is not the filters you see here. It's filters that are hidden in the sample engine. We can't see them, they're there. So basically, if I gather what I'm hearing correctly, it's a cutoff filter that, depending on how hard you strike it, it's opening up or closing according to the velocity. So it sounds like a softer sound if you strike it just loosely. All right, so now I'm going to turn off the amp velocity to 0. There's not going to be anything of the volume changing when I strike the key. But we can still hear some. So together with the velocity, like 2. And perhaps if we take the EQ and just bring the highs up on the total. Could this be a good like background piano? Some reverb. So let's hear it in tune with a synth engine and see. Yeah, I think that 10 cents was enough. So now we've heard what it sounds like when we're using the piano-like preset dynamics. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to loop it and I'm going to strip the dynamics and create dynamics myself. So 2 things. First, let's try out the dynamics. I'm going to turn off the dynamics, save and transfer to Nord. And then I'm going to use this this one here called low pass, high pass. Because the thing with the piano preset dynamics is that it will always sound a little bit muffled. It's only sounding like it was recorded at full force. So what I'm going to attempt now is to have more of that fluffy feeling even when we play softly. So I'm going to turn on the filter. I'm going to step over to low pass, high pass, which is two filters working at the same time. High pass is going to take care of what's in the high frequencies. Low pass is going to take care of the low frequencies. And then you can set it to a point where it sounds like there is no filter. You can hear it, but it's like fairly transparent. And then you can just let the low pass go down with velocity. So let's see if we can find a sweet spot. So that's the low pass. It's the high pass. So I'm going to set the high pass somewhere around there. Somewhere. And then I'm going to turn this down a bit. Just there. And then I'm going to say velocity, tiny, tiny bit. And then some amp velocity. I didn't really get it right. Another thing which is sounding a bit ridiculous, in order to make something sound softer, is to use the attack. And then too much. Yeah, the final thing I want to do here is to create loops. Now, currently, this is 11.8 megabytes. That's fairly small, I'd say. Like, surprisingly small. They're doing some compression, I'm sure. But what I'd like to do now is just press this button here called looped. And now it's going to make loops out of everything. What I'm going to do is that I will trim the end point. I could do that on all of them. And press looped. All of them. Change the loop point on all of them. Again, select all of them, change the end point. Yeah, all of them, change the loop point. Yeah, okay, let's see. And now we can hear that somewhere around there, the transient is kind of wearing off. To make it sound less obvious what we're doing, we can increase the X fade factor. Actually, I'm going to do it on all of them. Like maybe 50% crossfade. Shorter. Okay, so let's go through all of the loops now. Good. 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 This could be closer. And the closer to the starting point, oops, hello, the closer to the starting point we get, the shorter the sample, which means the whole instrument is going to be smaller. And something that's really smart, it's something called level envelope. It's going to automatically change the volume to match the volume where it's coming in. So when it's creating this crossfade loop, it's going to sound really smooth without much work. I'm doing all of this both in order to make it smaller files, but also in order to make it more of a synth engine. With a loop you can choose to stay and sustain it. So what I'm curious about now is how small can we get the file without making it sound very annoyingly cut off or anything. Alright, so from 11.8 megabytes, I'm going to save this and transfer to Nord. Let's see. To 8.9, so we shaved off quite a bit there. So now we could hold this with a sustain forever. So now we need to set this decay there. So we created this patch today. It sounds like this. And to be honest, I think it's fairly, how to put it, like dull. It's very much in the background, but upright pianos, they have a certain mood to them, and this is a fairly small one, so I don't expect this to achieve any like magical results. It's a fairly average school piano, but I like it. It's my piano, and when I play this, I get this vibe of having an upright piano. And like when I was a kid, I was playing piano from the age of 12, and we had an upright, and it's sort of bringing back memories. It's a bit nostalgic, and I think whenever I create patches and sounds, I tend to always want to go into some sort of embracing, I don't know how to put it, like a sound that totally embraces you, whereas this, it's very much in the background. It's dampened, it's solemn. Yeah, it's a background piano. And specifically with pianos, I feel like you don't always need to make it like in your face, because those kinds of pianos are very annoying to fit into any type of sound. So this piano sound perhaps is good for vocals. Like, thank you for watching my video. Thank you for all your support. Thank you for the chill times we've had. Thank you for the times ahead. Thank you for staying here for a while. If if you want to support my work on Patreon, you know where to go. Thank you for the times we had together. Thank you, and you, and you. It's time to end this on a good note. It's time to end this on a good note. Yeah, thank you for chilling out. If there's anyone out there that wants this particular patch, please, I'm selling patches on my web store, and if you're supporting me on Patreon, you've got access to those patches as well. But I don't feel like this is ready to release, but if something like this would be something that you would like to have, like I could create like a finished version of this and make it better, maybe tune the piano beforehand to make it a bit nicer. But I think it's nice to record a piano in this state and to preserve it. Yeah. Well, thank you for hanging out. There's Cuckoo, and there's a piano patch on the Nordwave too. And peace out. Thank you for listening till the end.